The government encouraged the manufacture and importation of military firearms for the criminals to use. This is intended to foster a feeling of insecurity, which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion, the CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working perfectly. The middle class is begging the government to do away with the Second Amendment.
Well, it's just one other manifestation of the Nazi Gestapo police state which has taken over this country. What angers me most is the stupidity of the vast herd of American sheeple out there that think they know something and they don't even know what planet they're on, to tell you the truth. Behold a pale horse. Well, actually, I wrote it over a period of years back beginning in the early 80s and continuing up into about 88. I finished it, I believe, in 89. And I may have added a couple of things in 90, and then it was published in December of 1990. I have no idea. It's been the #1 underground bestseller of all time with no advertising whatsoever. And people sell it on the street corners in New York City. Barnes & Noble had to take it off the shelf in their New York City bookstore because it's, by their own admission, it's the most stolen book in their inventory. Yeah, every prediction that I ever made has come true, except for one, and that was only because I had not realized that they had gone as far as they have, and that prediction that I was wrong about was that Manuel Noriega could not be tried in American court and sentenced to an American prison, as he was the head of a sovereign nation and thus had diplomatic immunity, just like anyone he would send to our country to represent his country. And, of course, that certainly proved that no one in the world is safe now from the encroaching New World Order, and they can go after anybody they want to, including the President of the United States if they want to, and Americans don't understand that. They think we can go after somebody that's the head of a foreign country, but we're still safe. We're not safe. Nobody's safe anymore. Well, either Americans are going to wake up and they're going to stand up in unison and take up arms and challenge the federal government to step back within the boundaries of the Constitution, or there's going to be a civil war in this country. The only alternative to that is total enslavement of the entire human race on a global scale, because that's where this is going. This is all about a one-world totalitarian socialist government. It's about destroying all existing nation-states, destroying all existing religions, save the religion of those who are bringing this about, which is the secular humanist socialist religion. The people whose ancestors came to the New World to escape religious persecution in the Old World stood and watched the Branch Davidians burn, including all of their children, all of their women, and they cheered and said that it was because they were a bunch of religious fanatics. I heard Christians say that. I heard Orthodox Jews say that. I heard Baptists say it. I heard Catholics say it. And to their shame, I have to tell them that they are not religious, moral people. They are stupid, ignorant sheeple who are on the verge of enslavement, and they're going to deserve exactly what they get. I have no sympathy for them whatsoever anymore. I used to cry big alligator tears for them in their ignorance, and I used to do everything I could to wake them up. I've drawn my line in the sand, and I'm going to do what's right by God, and I don't give a damn who cares or who likes it or who doesn't, even if it means I have to die on my doorstep. Not only will I not come in, but if the Civil War has to start right here, it will. I am not a tax fraud or a tax cheat. I pay all legal, lawful, and constitutional taxes which I am required to pay. I've never defrauded any bank or any person in my entire life, and I will protect my rights with the tools given to me by the founders in case it should ever come to this. And if the rest of the sheeple want to proceed into the pens and get sheared and then continue up the ramp to the slaughter, that's their business. No matter what happens here, I win. Why do we have to look at the communists? It's happening right here in the United States. Has been for quite some time. The only ones that have reached the public eye are the Weaver family and the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas. But it's happened on a large scale all across this country, in every state. It usually is contained at the local level. And one of the indications that you will know that I'm right is that you haven't seen what's happening here on any of the major news networks, and you're not going to, because I've taken a stance documented in the law. I've posted it on my web page. I have stated that I am a portion of the unorganized militia of the state of Arizona in the United States of America for many years, and that my stance is well-grounded. I'm right. I have a right to do what I'm doing, and anybody that comes up here and tries to encroach upon my rights or take away the protection of the Constitution from me and my family is going to get a bullet. But the truth is, the policeman came right out of the community where the sheeple live. Why would anybody think that they're going to be any smarter than the rest of the animals out there? Well, it's absolutely true. He is a big exception. There are only about 3 sheriffs in the entire country who know what their authority is and have the guts to take a stand. This is the only police chief that I've ever heard of who's taken the proper stand. So if you want to know if they're going to go along with it, yeah, they'll go along with it to get their little paycheck. See, they've sold their country out for what, $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year? That's pretty cheap, isn't it? And for maybe they'll get a retirement check in 20 or 30 years. So they sold their whole country out. They sold their children's future. They sold their grandchildren's future and their great-grandchildren whom they haven't even seen yet. Well, in the first place, you're wrong in your premise. They don't think at all. That's why commercials are 30 seconds long. That is the attention span of the average American sheeple. They can't think beyond 30 seconds. That's why no American company, our business, our group plans ahead more than about 2 or 3 months, right? And that's why we're getting beat by the Marxist socialist communists, because they have 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 15-year plans, 25-year plans, and 50-year plans, and they stick to them. Either the American people are going to become slaves within just a few years, and it's going to be an enslavement like nobody can even dream of, and it's going to extend worldwide, and we're the only people that can stop it, because we're the only people in the world still who have the capability and the arms to be able to stop it. Or there's going to be a civil war which will last between 5 and 15 years to restore constitutional Republican government and freedom and liberty worldwide. I don't want it to happen either. Ever since I saw the plan back in 1971 and 72 when I was on the intelligence briefing team for CINCPAC Fleet to bring about one world totalitarian socialist government, and when I saw that the United States was behind the whole thing, this is not coming from without. The United States created the United Nations. The United States created the European Union that has just been formed. The States is acting as the world's police force right now, with its headquarters in Washington, D.C. Stated and avowed policy of the United States government to create world government over the ashes of all sovereign nations and existing religions around this world. I'm telling you that I saw that plan while I was in the Office of Naval Intelligence on the intelligence briefing team, the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet. That's what Behold a Pale Horse is all about. That's what's in that book. Hey, this has been a goal for this. It's the reason this country was founded, and Americans don't understand that. The Founding Fathers, many of them were deists. They were members of the secret societies. Some of them were members of the Illuminati. They created this country and gave the common man freedom for the first time in the history of the world, made him a king in his own right. They told him what he had to do to keep his freedom and what he would lose if he didn't do it. And when they did this, giving the common man freedom, it toppled all the kings and queens off their thrones all around the world, and that was the major goal of establishing this country. If the common man could have been vigilant and maintained his freedom and not given in to the I want, and I deserve, and you got to feed me, and you got to do this, and you got to take care of me, and change my diaper, and wipe my butt, and get me a job, and entertain me, and all that kind of stuff, which always leads back into what they call democracy, which always leads into socialism, which end goal stated by Marx and Lenin is communism. Democracy is absolutely indispensable to socialism. Oh, it shocked the hell out of me, but they thought I was one of them. It was an accident that I got in there. I'd been a member of the Demolay Society when I was 13 years old, only attended 3 meetings, and then my father was transferred to Japan. I never saw another lodge and never went to another meeting, and that was the end of that. And I filled out all my documentation for my top secret QSI security clearance, which was required to be able to work in the command center and on the briefing team at CINPAC Fleet. I didn't see DeMolay on there, so I checked Freemason. And when I checked Freemason, that's what opened all the doors and got me the security clearance and put me in those positions to be able to see what I saw. And I think the hand of God was working when that happened so that I would be able to warn his people of what was coming. And I've been doing that ever since. I didn't see absolutely everything, but I saw enough to give me an edge and a vast head start on anybody that's ever lived before in the public sector that's not normally privy to this information. And I spent the last, well, ever since, researching to find out what it all meant and where we're going. Well, because they know what's coming. They know that there's a hardcore group of American men and women who are devout, religious, moral people who love freedom and are dedicated to the concept of liberty and freedom and will fight to protect and defend constitutional Republican government against anything that comes along. And when that begins, it's going to be a terrible, terrible thing. I've spent most of my adult life trying to warn people and wake up enough people so that this did not have to happen, because I know it's going to be terrible. It means the public is stupid and they're already a hair's breadth away from total enslavement. If they had any brains at all, they would have said, no, I'm not taking that. And if you don't like it, that's tough. And all those businesses and all those driver's license bureaus and all those the revenue that it brings in for all those cities and counties would have just evaporated in smoke, and they would have backed down and said, okay, you don't have to do it. We'll do it another way. But they're too stupid to do that. They don't understand that the power in this country is the power of the people, and that they don't have to do anything that's outside the bounds of the Constitution. And the government can be held within the bounds, the restraints that the Constitution put upon it, that our founding fathers created so that the American people could never be enslaved. That
Yes.
Nobody could come and invade this country and enslave the American people. The only way it could be done is from within if the American people allowed it to be done. Well, let me give you a vision of the future. There will be no money. There won't be any driver's licenses. There won't be any insurance cards or anything like that. Everybody will have an account on a computer. Everybody will have a computer chip implant somewhere on their body that will access the computer. Everybody, when they go to work, will get so many credits for that work, and they can go out and wave their little computer chip in their hand or whatever it is under a scanner at the supermarket and buy whatever they've got credits to buy. And if they don't have credits, they've got to stay home until they get some credits. What's insane about it is that the American people think that that would be convenient or that that would be good for them. It is the ultimate in-run goal to enslave the populace and to steal what's left that's not already stolen by the elite who are engineering and machinizing all of this stuff to make it come about. The goal of a debt-based economy is not to get caught stealing. And that's what they're doing, stealing the wealth and the substance and the nation right out from under us. And that's the only end result that can come out of a debt-based economy. And the only way that they can't get caught is if the people allowed them to go to a cashless system. Then they can never get caught. But if they don't go to a cashless system, eventually the economy will collapse and they're going to get caught. They want to go to a cashless system, and that's why they ultimately have to. Anybody understands how this economy works and what the end result of a debt-based economy where the interest is never created or printed, and the way that it works, have to collapse, or they have to go to a totally cashless system in order that they don't get caught and are able to perpetuate the theft. The only way to keep it going until they do that is to keep creating more money, which creates more inflation, which devalues the value of what everybody is earning and making, and that's why everybody feels more and more strain every year and keeps sucking more and more out of the system through the bogus Internal Revenue Service income tax system so that they can keep from getting caught as long as possible. Well, they are 3-year-olds. That's their mentality. The average American has never had an original thought in his entire life, or her entire life. And if they're not told what to think, they cannot think. And that's the truth. Clinton didn't do anything except eliminate the deficit. You know how you eliminate the deficit? You either don't spend as much so that you stay within the bounds allotted by Congress, or you have Congress pass more allotments so that you can spend more than what you need to spend. It did not pay off the national debt, did not balance the budget. Have a deficit. A deficit is when you spend more than what you've been given. So when he says we got a zero deficit, that means absolutely nothing except Congress is allotting more money for the government to spend because the government is not spending less. They're spending more than they ever have had. Well, ever since 1988, when I began telling the world, not just the American people, but the world, about Majesty 12, which is the plan to enslave the human race in a world totalitarian socialist government, the merger of the military of the United States and what used to be known as the old Soviet Union under NATO, which is occurring now, to create the world police force. Most people don't understand that NATO is an arm of the United Nations. It was formed auspices of the United Nations Charter and takes its orders from the Security Council. Warsaw Pact was also formed under the auspices of the United Nations Charter and was an arm of the United Nations and took its orders also from the Security Council. The Cold War was a total farce, and that's why we never had any military conflicts with the Soviet Union. Well, if they've passed a world court, how can they have a world court if there is sovereign nations? Because sovereign nations are not subject to any courts but their own. So how can they have a world court unless there's a world government to which sovereign nations have given up their sovereignty? Does the Constitution for the United States of America say that we are subject to the dictates or the jurisdiction or the rulings of a world court? Does it say that anywhere in the Constitution? No, that's wrong. Held are paid the so-called income tax and excise tax almost, it's either 11 or 12 years, I forget which. I've never made a secret of that. I am not liable for the so-called income tax administered by the so-called Internal Revenue Service. And I am not, but I do pay all lawful and constitutional taxes, which I am required to pay and always will. Well, a lawful tax would be a state sales tax down at your local grocery store. A lawful tax would be a property tax for which you paid for it with fiat Federal Reserve notes instead of gold or silver coin. You can't pay off a debt with a debt. So you never really purchase anything in this country in this debt-based economy with the fiat Federal Reserve notes. All you do is take possession under a lease, and the ownership stays with the government. That's why you get a warrant deed when you pay off your house instead of the patent title to the property, and that's why you get a certificate of title when you think you paid for your automobile instead of the actual patent title to that property. Fraud. It's all fraud. Oh, yeah. The American people are standing inside the gates of Disneyland holding their e-ticket, which is expired. None of the rides are working, and they're just having a great time. I didn't say in the next 2 years. I said in the next very few years. I don't have a crystal ball. God does not whisper in my ear. I'm not a prophet, and I'm not a psychic. From what I saw in that plan when I was with ONI, and what I have researched since then, tells me that within a very few years, the American people are either going to be totally enslaved in the worst enslavement that you can even dream of, or there's going to be a civil war actively being fought under the most terrible conditions in this country. I care. They're not my leaders, and it's not my government anymore. They have subverted my government, destroyed it from within, and my only hope is that I can find enough good American patriots who are moral, who are good men, who understand what liberty and freedom is all about, to go in there and restore constitutional Republican government by any method that it requires, including the force of arms. Otherwise, my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren are going to be slaves. It's not my system. It is not operating within the boundaries of the Constitution. They have thrown the Constitution out. It is treason in operation. There is a subversion of government going on as we speak in the halls of government throughout this country, not just in Washington, D.C. Absolutely. They have declared war upon me and all patriots and everybody in this country who is a loyal constitutionalist, who has taken an oath to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And if the Civil War has to start on my doorstep, that's as good a place as any. Somewhere, might as well start right here. We spoke to Sheriff Arthur Lee last night. Arthur Lee says that I'm right, that he has jurisdiction over the feds in this county, and he has told them not to come in this county and harass this family. Sheriff, this is a good American community here, and there is a very strong militia, and not just here, but good, solid Americans all across this country are sick and fed up, and we know that if they attempt anything here, there's going to be a war the likes of you can't conceive of what's going to happen. Your vote doesn't mean a damn thing, and if you haven't figured that out yet, then you're too far gone to even be listening to me. My head caved in. I've lost my left leg in this fight. We've been shot at. We've been threatened. They made it so that we couldn't work for anybody. But, that's exactly what happened to the Founding Fathers. They lost everything. They lost their families. They lost their children. They lost their wives. They lost their property. They lost limbs. They lost everything. Well, I believe it was about 3.8% of all the people in the colonies have found this nation and fought the Revolutionary War to create it and give what they called their posterity liberty and freedom. And the United States government was created to protect the rights of individuals, whether or not they voted. No matter what happened, they were supposed to stay within the bounds of the Constitution and protect the rights of individuals, and guaranteed us in that document constitutional Republican government, not just in Washington, D.C., but in every state, every county, every city of this country. Not only that, I'm right within the law. I am right under the Constitution, and I am right within the law, and it's all posted on my website. They lose. They either back down and get within the bounds of the Constitution, they lose. They come up here and they kill us all, they lose. And we're still free. Now, a lot of people aren't going to understand that, but I'll still be free. That's right, and none of us are afraid. We are Christians. We know that if we do the right thing, God is going to smile at us when we get to those pearly gates. However people view those pearly gates, I don't care. Well, the only thing I can say to them, they're not going to like being slaves either. That badge and that gun isn't going to give them any special privileges in the New World Order. In fact, if they'll read State Department Publication 7277, they'll find out that most of their law enforcement agencies are going to disappear except for a small group that will be just used to maintain internal order once they have everybody in the bonds of enslavement. And also, if they study the history of socialism and communism, everybody who helped socialism and communism come to power are the first people that they eliminate once they have welded the last chains in place. Against the Constitution now, they'll go against socialism later. So all you little traitors marching around out there think you're going to be some big whiz in this New World Order. You're not. You're gonna be right up there on the scaffold, hanging with the rest of them.